Shabbat Shalom. Well, here we are, the first Shabbat, the first day of 2022. Somewhat unbelievably, a new year begins. Certainly, it's not our Jewish community's most serious new year of the year, but for many of us, the secular new year does mark time for us in an important way. And since 2020, we've clearly been using the secular calendar and the secular year to count into the unknown future of our current pandemic. 2020 was unprecedented. 2021 was challenging and sometimes terrifying year with some shining moments of hope. And now 2022, what do you have in store for us? What new discoveries or new challenges will present themselves to us and shape our reality? A path unfolds before us like a yellow brick road, and we look down it and we wonder what scarecrows and flying monkeys, but also rediscovered hearts and courage might lie before us. Wanting to know what will happen in the future is natural. When someone gets a little, or something gets a little tense in our home, our 4.5-year-old will often ask, "Will it be okay?" And we assure her, "Of course, baby, everything's okay." But isn't that all of our question? Will it be okay? Throughout history, prophets and soothsayers and charlatans and visionaries have tried to predict what's going to happen in the future. One particularly famous individual, Nostradamus, wrote a book of predictions that was published in 1555 in France called The Prophecies, in which he foretells the future year by year. He is a much reputed and much disputed foreteller and predictor. So Nostradamus, what have you got for us? What's 2022 going to be like? Interpreters of his writing explain that for 2022, he prophesied that a great fire will fall from the sky. Cool. Not the greatest news, but to be fair, Nostradamus was heavily influenced by the more fire and brimstone parts of the Bible and by several quite disastrous plagues of his own lifetime. So, a great fire will fall from the sky. It may be time to visit Parshat Va'era, this week's Torah portion in which, yes, a great fire falls from the sky. We find our ancestors enslaved for 400 years, who are also probably wondering what the future has in store for them. They've just met a guy named Moses, who's been charged with their deliverance. And Moses and his brother Aaron have approached Pharaoh, king of ancient Egypt, to demand that he let their people go. Plague after plague, God rains down on the ancient Egyptian people and their leadership. During each plague, Pharaoh agrees to let our people go, begging Moses to get God to stop it. But after each one is over, as we know, his heart is hardened, and he returns to his stubborn refusal to release the Hebrews. Blood, frogs, lice, insects, cattle disease, boils, and then a plague of Nostradamus proportions. Instructed by God to do so, Vayet Moshe et Matehu al Hashamayim, Varanai Natan Kolot Uvarad, Vati Halach Eish Artza. So Moses held his rod out towards the sky, and God sent thunder and hail, and fire streamed down to the ground. We don't often talk about that part of that plague, but in fact it is told that the hail was so hard and ferocious that fire fell from the sky and streamed down to the ground. Aish, a great fire fell from the sky. It is perhaps creepy for this coincidence to reveal itself on this Shabbat. But thankfully, we are not a tradition of creepiness and coincidence. It is interesting that a long time ago, a man said scary things that we can see signs of or make relevant for today, for sure. And no doubt for our ancestors, they were also weighing whether a prediction had come true, since Moses had told them it was coming. Signs and wonders were coming, he told them. Maybe they believed him. Maybe they thought he was a liar. In this case, of course, he was God's mouthpiece, and he was telling the truth. But how could they have known that? And after it happened, would they wonder, wait, was that thing that Moses was talking about? In fact, that's the thing about predictions. Even though they sound ominous, and maybe some look like they really do come true, they are most often vague guesses that best get interpreted in hindsight. Jewish tradition teaches us not to trust someone who claims to be a prophet who knows the future. Throughout the book of Deuteronomy, we read that if a person comes before us and calls themselves a Navi, a prophet, or a Chalem Chalom, a dream diviner, if they tell you something that is outside of Torah or natural law, do not believe them, even if their sign or portent comes true. And later in Deuteronomy, we are warned, let no one be found among your people who is an augur, a diviner, a soothsayer, a sorcerer, saying that a false prophet, one who is not God's mouthpiece or who God is speaking through, that person is worthy of death. Jewish tradition begs of us not to believe the hype, the magic, the doomsday scenarios, and the dark harbingers. Will fire rain down from the sky this year? I mean, maybe. But because we cannot see into the future, the question for us, as it was for our ancestors, becomes twofold. Not what will happen next, since we can't know, but what actions will we take to shape the future, and can we be ready for it? See, one very interesting thing about predictions is that they are meant to be predictable. It's right there in the word, because we have a sense that predictability is a pretty good thing, and often it is. When driving a car, our movements should be pretty predictable by other drivers. When we guide and raise our children, it's often good to be predictable, save for some fun surprises, so they feel safe, and so their world is not a source of chaos. When our friends need us, it is best to be predictable in our showing up for them, that we should be considered dependable, our kindness expected. But I think Jewish tradition teaches us that there are also times when it is best to be unpredictable, to go outside of what is expected. The Israelites, claiming their freedom, do what is unpredictable. Well, not at first. We learn this week of their kutzer ruach, how their spirits had been crushed by bondage such that they could not hear or believe Moses when he told them that their freedom was coming. How predictable, how expected that a people crushed under the foot of an oppressor would not be able to see their way towards hope. But how incredibly and fantastically and inspirationally and maybe aspirationally unpredictable they were when they picked themselves up one dark night and grabbed some clothes and some unrisen dough, and they made their escape. How unpredictable it was that they would sing and dance their way out of slavery. How unpredictable it was that they would stand at the edge of the water and shake off their fear and do something that no one had ever done before. A group of slaves 400 years in the making who had never heard God's voice. How unpredictable was their courage. They must have surprised even themselves. We cannot possibly know what's coming down the road. We know where we stand now. We know who we're in it with. And we know that we have a chance to shape what's coming. In some ways, our predictability will keep us safe and keep each other safe, like drivers signaling before changing lanes, like parents being a consistent source of comfort, like friends showing up when needed. We will predictably protect and support one another. And What will be our unpredictabilities this year? What will we do that will surprise even ourselves, that will change the game in unexpected ways? What will we decide to believe in, to let in, to bask in? What injustice, poverty, or climate change or democracy will we stand up to and stand up and do something about, maybe joining with people that we don't even know yet? What words will flow from our mouths uninhibited? What painting will we, even the unartists among us, paint? And what journey will we begin out of the dark night? And what water's edge will we decide will not stop us from our dreams? From a year that includes joy and surprises and community and art and justice and the writing of a yet unwritten story. Together, as 2022 begins, may we feel safe in our predictability, but also together may we cast off preset predictions or assumptions that do not serve us and step forward with unpredictable, brave stories, brave choices that shape the story that we would rather tell. And may only appropriate precipitation and love rain down from the sky. Shabbat Shalom and Happy New Year.